So the very basics of the Gizmo, how to access the Gizmo. I went over some of this in the clay tool video I did, but I'm just going to recover some of this anyway, just so this is sort of its own video, not reliant on the previous one. So to access the Gizmo, it's down here. You're going to open that menu with the bottom button here on your secondary controller. I also explained the left-handedness thing, so you might want to check out that video just to sort of explain with the buttons and the handedness. So open your menu, the bottom button here on your secondary controller, and these are the placement modes. So this is the free clay placement. I covered that in the last video, and the surface as well. So the one in the middle here is the Gizmo placement mode. And firstly, most important probably when you're using the Gizmo is your primary thumbstick. Click that down once to reset the rotation and once to reset it back to 0, 0 in the world. So this is the world axis going across X and Y. I'll do some of this stuff for people that, a lot of people I think using Modeler for their first 3D program. So the idea of a 3D Gizmo here is these are 3 axis and 3D space, X, Y, and Z, and traditionally they correspond, excuse me, to RGB, red, green, and blue, with X being the red, Y being green, and Z being blue. And this is usually, how you'd face on if you're in a traditional package here with orthographic views. Some programs use Y up, but I won't go into all that here. It's a long running argument. So basically that would be your front view there with X going across. And X is the primary. I'll turn on symmetry here. Here's the symmetry plane. X is the primary and currently the only symmetry that we have in Modeler. So that's the primary one there. And usually when you're modeling in 3D, you're going to be modeling across the X anyway, in most cases. So I'll just turn off symmetry again. And the Gizmo in 3D, obviously, you can accurately move around the 3D space with all these different widgets. So this is your translation. So we're translating in Y, X, and Z. And these squares here in the middle of the circle, there so you can constrain to 2 axes. So for instance, this one here is going to constrain to Z and Y. This one here is going to be X and Y. So you can only move, you're constrained to that plane. So whatever I do here, it's staying along that line, you can see. So I'm going to press thumbstick on the primary, and that's going to reset it again. If there's no rotation, it'll reset it again to that world axis. This is 0, 0 in your world axis across these 2 lines here, X and the Y. So the Gizmo itself, you've seen the translate and the constrain, the 2-axis translate or the dual axis constraint. And then we have our rotation here. So when you start to rotate on your secondary controller, the top button there, the one with the icon on it, you just hold that down and you're going to get your angle snaps in 15 degrees, I believe. And if you move outside, it goes into 5 degrees. So come inside the circle and you'll be 15 degrees outside, 5 degrees. And once again, thumbstick. So let's say I'm slightly rotated off the axis. Thumbstick to reset the rotation. Thumbstick again to reset to 0, 0. So that's the basics of it, really. There's not much more to it than that. Translate constraint, rotate, and then rotate. As I say, start rotating, and that button there, the icon, top button on the secondary controller, hold that down, and get your either 5 degrees out here or 15 degrees in here. So moving inside now, that's the translation and the rotation. And this is going to be your scale. That's going to be uniform scale across the 3 axes. And this can also be achieved here using the thumbstick on the primary up and down to resize it. So it's the same thing. And it's also in here in this menu. size here. So there's 3 different ways, whichever you prefer. So, thumbstick, or you can get a little bit more precise with this. Even though the thumbstick, you can, if you can move it very slowly, it's going to resize at a slower pace, give you a bit more control. So moving inside, that's our uniform scale, our uniform resize. And these widgets here, these are our extenders. So it's just going to extend along those 3 axes and then reset. And if you want to, if you've used your extenders or your resize and you want to go back to the default, you can just open your menu here, the bottom button, the little hammer and the pencil icon on the secondary. Open up your menu here and just click back on whatever primitive you want to reset. Or if you go to the other primitives, resize that and then switch over and then switch back, it's going to resize it back to the default, if you're wondering how to reset that to your default size. So yeah, that's our extenders. It's very simple to use, very straightforward. So one thing that might catch you out when you first start to use the Gizmo is that you might mistake the shape here, which is just a preview of what you're going to create, for an actual shape. So if you've set this up nice here and you have the right size and maybe you have rotated exactly how you want, and then you switch back to the free move and it disappears, you might wonder what's going on. And then you go back to Gizmo and it's going to appear back here wherever your controller is, the primary. So the reason that's happening is because, as I say, this is just a preview. So to lay down the clay, your secondary controller and your trigger here in the secondary controller, you want to hold that down and then just choose whichever of your widgets, and you can do it with rotation as well. You can see there it's rotating, so we'll move it out here and then hold down that trigger on the secondary and you can put clay down using rotation as well. So now it's disappeared again here, even though I'm on Gizmo, because I've deleted all the clay in the layer. So I want to make a new layer and it'll come back then, because that was just an empty layer with nothing in it. So remember, you have to use the secondary trigger and keep that held down, while you're doing whatever sort of translation or rotation you want to do. So next I want to go over the interaction between the placement mode here, the free placement mode, and the Gizmo mode. And when this happens, the reason this is happening is because I have the controller here. This is going to follow your controller, and you don't have to switch down here. The button to switch is the little axis button here, secondary controller with showing those 3 axes I was talking about. So you can use that that's a quick switch between Gizmo. And you'll notice here, wherever I put my hand, primary controller, and whichever way, it's always going to be attached to this little arrow here, or the little the blue kind of looks like a sort of a blowtorch flame. So whenever you switch using that button, now this can be very useful for quickly moving around the scene, so that you don't have to, you do this for rougher kind of movements. You can just say you're working over here with the Gizmo, then you can just quick switch, come over here, quick switch, and then you can hit reset, and that'll reset the angle back to the world axis, which is Z up, as I mentioned earlier. So quick switch and then thumbstick to reset, quick switch. And sometimes in VR it looks like your angle is funny, but it isn't. Like, to me it looked like there was an error there with the reset, but it's just, as I suppose VR, you're looking at a true kind of 3D perspective rather than what you're seeing through a camera in your traditional 3D programs. So yeah, that's a good one to get used to there. Just get used to moving that around and quick switching and then hitting the thumbstick to reset your rotation and then hit it again if you want to go back. So that's pretty much it. That's the basics of Gizmo for laying down clay. So you can also use the Gizmo with the warp tool. So I'm going to actually lay down some clay, or I'll just show a quick example first using the warp tool. So warp tool, as you can see here, has its Gizmo, same the mode placement, and then the same you can use your thumbstick on the primary, up or down. You can use the little ball there. It doesn't have these extender widgets, but they will be there in the future. It's something that I've asked about a couple of times because it'll really increase the power of this then for some of the things I'm going to show here now. So you can see this little box in the middle. That's your fall off. So I'm going left and right on the primary to bring that fall off, and what that corresponds to is over here on your menu, this hardness. You can see here as I drag that up or down, and basically that's just a ramp, a sort of a fall off. So it's going to be 100% hard here, and then it's going to blend down to this section here. I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm just going to go left or right on the thumbstick, and then same thing, hold down the trigger, and then I can extend that shape out, and that's just warping. So same again here, hold down the trigger, hold down the trigger, and it's almost like you're using it like a traditional sort of an extrude in a 3D package. So I'll just bring it in here, and same. And then you can also, of course, switch to the other shapes here. So if I wanted to, let's say, extrude a circle, or sorry, a cylinder, and extrude a cylinder out of there. And if I do that a bit slower. No, we're still getting the jaggies, but that's if I up the res there, you know, that's gonna, or just use the no, I'm not gonna get into that, but you could smooth it. But anyway, that's how you can extrude with the Gizmo using the warp tool. And you can see I can use the rotation as well, the same. So I'm just gonna undo those, and now I'll just reset once, twice, and then I'm actually going to go back to the clay tool and extend this out, extend it out, and then I'm going to hold this button again with the axis icon as I rotate, snap to 45, invert the clay by pressing this the double arrow going either way on the primary, and then hit the trigger, take a bit of clay off there, reset, and then I'll just stretch this down, move it out here, move it across, and then the same. I'm going to grab this circle, start to rotate, and then hit this button again, the top button on the secondary, to lock in that 45. And then you can line this up, take off some of the clay, reset with the thumbstick, and now I'm going to go back to warp and go back to our cube shape, and I'll just bring that up here, stretch it up, and I will show you what I mean with the fall off here. So I bring that bring the hardness down with the primary thumbstick, and you kind of have to play around with this, but you can see here it's going to affect it 100% here, and then it's going to give me, as I hold down the trigger and pull it up, it's going to give me this a curve, if you can see that. And now I'll put the hardness back up, and now it's obviously just an extrusion, so you can see the difference. And you can also see, you know, where that might be handy for and this is why I want widgets here on this extend our widgets the same as clay, because you'll be able to, you won't be governed by the entire size here when you're trying to do extrusion. So if I, obviously, if I want to encompass all of this with the size of this, I can't narrow it in here on just this x-axis. It has to be all three. So I'll bring down that fall off again, bring that up, bring it down again, bring it up. Then you can see how you can kind of quickly extrude out these shapes, and then you can just use your regular, this is about Gizmo, but you can also use it here in a freer way with angle snaps. I've turned on angle snaps over here. Maybe drop the hardness actually. You can get some more curved sort of hard surface stuff. But that's moving away from the topic of Gizmo. So that's Gizmo then, and how it can be used as a modeling tool with the warp, with the warp tool as a modeling tool. And lastly now, I'm going to just go out. So I'm scoping out to scene mode. So I'm in a layer here. I'm just going to switch back to clay first, and I'm going to add a new layer. And now we can see we've two layers, so it'll make more sense. And now I'm going to scope out, and now because nothing is dimmed out here with dark shader, so we're at scene level, and you can see these outlines, and I'm using the select tool here. So that's when you're scoped into the different layers, but that's probably for another video. Just get rid of that. And now I'm going to go to the select tool, and same again, it's in the same spot here, placement. And you might say, well, where's the gizmo? You have to select it, and then when you select it, the gizmo comes up. And basically this is a way to easily assemble your scene, accurately, and more, in a 3D kind of a traditional 3D way, where you want to be moving things around. Because there's a free mode, same thing, you use this quick switch button, the top button here, and now it can move freely. Hold down the trigger when this, doesn't even have to be selected actually. I can just hold down the trigger, and then I can make duplicates. And the same for the gizmo. So remember, that's the same button here, switches. So if your gizmo isn't showing up and you're not selected, see the gizmo's not showing up, just to bear that in mind. You want to just select it, so that, because if there's more layers here in the scene, it needs to know which one you want to work on, so you have to select it, and then you can move around using the same. I'm just going to turn off angle snaps here. You can move around using the same, exact same widgets and tools as the warp and the clay. So if you hold down trigger for this, it's going to duplicate. I don't know why that's happening. Yeah, angle snap is off. Yeah, I'm not too sure why that was happening. I'm just gonna reset this here. Yeah, it's back to normal. I'm not sure why that was happening, but not to worry. So this is just me holding down the trigger here on the secondary to duplicate, and then switch back to free mode again by hitting that the quick switch button, and select, reset, and that's how you use Gizmo for your your scene assembly. So that's, yeah, I've covered them all now. Clay, Gizmo, warp Gizmo, and scene level Gizmo. I hope this was useful in some way, shape, or form. Alright, cheers. Thanks, Killip.